everybody. Good evening. I'm Margie Booth, the co-chair of the National Center for Learning Disabilities, and it's my pleasure to welcome you this evening to our 2021 virtual benefit. Hi, Joe. Good to see you.
Hi, Margie.
Well,
I'm Joe Zimmel. I'm co-chair with Margie of the National Center for Learning Disabilities. Thank you for joining us. We're going to really have a fun VIP reception tonight, and the remainder of the events afterward, I think you'll enjoy and be really proud. Starting first with our martini maker and literal shaker, mixologist Leo Robacek, and our fellow board member and able assistant to Leo, Cassia Shifter. Margie, I just have one question. I'm in Colorado and it's only 4 here. You're in New York and it's 6. How many martinis have you practiced?
Enough so that I can just stand up straight, Joe, and get through the rest of this and smile doing it. So we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. I won't even ask you if you started, but first, I think we want to say hello to everybody here who's in the VIP reception. Like me, you're here to support the 1 in 5 with learning and attention issues, and we cannot thank you enough for that. I mean, it's just terrific of you to contribute the way you do. It helps us so much. It helps NCLD, help millions of people around the country. So now what we'd like to do is shake and stir a little bit, get that cocktail book out, get anything you want to help you make some awesome cocktails, and over to Leo and Cassia for some fun. See you soon. Enjoy the show.
Hey, Leo, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, celebrating Forces for Change. Really excited for you to be here. Let's get started. What are we making tonight?
Well, thank you for having me, Cassia, and thank you for the great intro. So tonight we're going to be making one of my favorite beverages, martinis. It's a cocktail that has quite a long history that could be done in so many different ways. And we're going to do 2 different iterations of it. We're going to do what's probably the most classic right now, a dry gin martini. So a little bit about myself. I've been in hospitality for, I guess, over 20 years. It's not a career that I ever thought I'd be part of, but it's a career that has definitely found me and has definitely allowed me to use sort of my LD or my ADHD in order to be super successful. And first thing we're going to do is make a dry martini. So a dry martini is actually not the classic martini. The story of the martini is a little sordid. We don't know exactly where it came from. We do know that it was made in the late 1800s in New York City, but it was also probably created in many different cities at the same time. So the original martini was done with gin, dry vermouth, and orange bitters. And it's sort of what we call a 50-50 martini now, because it's done in equal ratios, 50% dry vermouth to 50% gin. Most drinkers like what's called the dry martini, which is probably closer to an 8-to-1 ratio, 8 parts being gin or vodka and 1 part being dry vermouth. Now the martini actually came from another cocktail that we all know and love called the Manhattan, which is almost the same exact cocktail, but made with rye and sweet vermouth. That evolved to the Martinez, which is gin, sweet vermouth, and bitters. And then that evolved into the martini a little bit later on. So simple cocktail, but sort of difficult to perfect. And it's 3 ingredients. We're gonna use orange bitters. The one I'm using right now is Angostura orange, but there's a lot of different ones on the market. And you're welcome to try through all of them. We're also using gin. I'm using Beefeater gin for today. And then I'm using dry vermouth. Now, the one I chose to use is called Dolan Dry, but you are welcome to use any of the other amazing vermouths on the market. So I personally make my martinis stirred. That is the classic way that they were made. I know a lot of people like them shaken. There really is no right or wrong way. It's all a matter of preference in that way. The reason they became shaken throughout time is because they became very popular, as we all know, in a movie called Casino Royale, or through a book, which is a James Bond movie. And I think that's why a lot of people started moving to shaken cocktails. So I'm going to be using a mixing glass. You obviously do not need to have all of these same tools. You could use any vessel at home. I actually use a really large pint glass at home because I'm lazy to go get my bar tools. I'm going to also be using Japanese style jiggers. This is a 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce, 2 ounce. Again, you don't need to have these. Any jigger will do. If you do not have jiggers, I use shot glasses sometimes. It's all about ratios. The other tool I'm going to be using is a bar spoon. You do not need a fancy 40-centimeter Cocktail Kingdom bar spoon. You could use anything. Actually, at home, I use chopsticks because they're right there and they work really well. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add 1 dash of orange bitters. Then we are going to do 1 ounce of dry vermouth. I know that's not as dry as some people enjoy, but with my gin martinis, that's how I do it. If I were to do vodka, I would only do ½ ounce of dry vermouth, but I'm going to do 1 ounce. So when jiggering, you're going to want to hold the jigger to the left of the vessel if you are right-handed, because you want your dominant hand to be on the bottle. And then you're going to pour it straight in. A lot of people always want to hold the jigger up top. I think it sort of makes sense when you're measuring, but you really have nowhere to go, nowhere to pour it. And if you ever pour too much, it goes in the vessel. So if you're left-handed, you're going to hold it on the right hand, on the right-hand side, and you're going to flip it through. Then the next ingredient we're going to use is gin. Any London dry gin will do. There's so many different gins in the market. I usually like London dry because they're very classic and they're very juniper forward. But you can use any gin that's of your preference. If you're doing vodka as well, like I said, I would do 3 ounces of vodka because I'm doing gin. I'm going to do 2½ ounces. So
in terms of using less vermouth with vodka, is that because the flavors of the vermouth would overwhelm the flavors of the vodka?
yeah, that's just exactly that. I personally love vermouth. I think vermouth became one of these bad words in the industry for a long time because what people don't realize is vermouth is just an aromatized wine. I know that you used to be a sommelier or you're a non-practicing sommelier, sorry. So you would know this, but it's a fortified aromatized wine. So what a lot of people don't realize is that you have to keep it in the fridge and it has a shelf life like regular wine. It's a little bit longer than most wines. Usually after you open it, it's about a month max if it's kept in the fridge. So a lot of people were drinking vermouth that had been on a shelf for years and they would drink really bad oxidized vermouth. So yeah, generally vodka has a cleaner, more singular flavor, or some people say a lack of flavor, but it does have a flavor. So therefore I use a little bit less vermouth in order to balance that out, where gin is usually higher in ABV, alcohol by volume, but also has a lot of other botanicals, including juniper. So I balance it out that way. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our ice. Now, the question I probably get used the most is what type of ice should I use in order to make my martini? And honestly, it doesn't matter. I'm using cold draft ice, which is something that we have the luxury of having in our restaurants. But usually the bigger the cube, the better, but it's going to take longer to dilute it and stir it down if it's a bigger cube. If it's a smaller cube or the ice is more wet, as we call it, meaning it's already melting a bit, you want to stir it less. And the other question I'm always asked is how many times do I stir the martini? There is no real number because it's all very much dependent on the ice. So if the ice is already melting, you're going to want to stir it less. The only way that you can really tell is by tasting. So usually at the bar, we taste 2 to 3 times. And what you're tasting for is not temperature, because when you taste with the straw, it actually is about 7 degrees warmer on your palate. You're tasting for dilution of flavor. So does it have that texture that you want? Does it have that flavor that you want? So this obviously needs a little bit more ice. And contrary to popular belief, the more ice that you have within your mixing vessel, the better. It doesn't dilute it anymore. It actually just makes the glass colder quicker, which allows you to get the dilution more evenly. If you have less ice, since there's a bigger ratio to ice, it melts a lot quicker. So you're going to stir it until it's to your taste. And now you could do many different ways. The classic recipe comes with a lemon twist. I actually really want an olive today, so that's what I'm going to do. But you can do either.
So do you keep the glasses with ice in the fridge to keep them chilled?
Yeah, I keep all of my glasses chilled. And it's just a glass is an insulator, so it takes a lot more to keep that glass cold, but it also, being an insulator, it takes a lot more for that temperature to change. So if you have a cold glass, it's going to keep your drink colder longer.
Yeah.
And as we know, martinis, temperature is the name of the game. Now I'm using a Hawthorne strainer. There's different types of strainers that you can use. There's julep strainers, you could use that as well. Or if you're at home and you don't have anything and it's for yourself, you're welcome to use your hand. You're welcome to use like a little, like sieve or something else, but obviously a Hawthorne strainer or a julep strainer is a way to go. And you just sort of want to pour it in the center and make sure you get that last drop. And then we're going to finish off with an olive. Lots of different olives in the market. Generally, you want a green olive versus a black olive. So we use Castle Vetrano, but you can use Spanish greens or anything that you desire. It's a matter of preference. Or you can do a lemon twist. If you want to get playful as well, especially if you're using other artisanal gins, you can use other twists like orange twist or grapefruit twist. They also really work, especially coming into the citrus season right now for the holidays. And this is our version of a dry martini. The next cocktail I'm going to make is a Gibson. All of you should have the recipe at home to follow. I know it is a little bit more complicated because we're pickling our onions at home, but if you don't want to do that, there's plenty of different places or brands that sell amazing pickled onions. I think Filthy is one of the brands. And so with the Gibson, it's a little bit of a different ratio. This is our version of a Gibson. It's not a classic Gibson at all. So we're actually going to be almost combining a dirty martini and a Gibson. Cassie, do you have a preference of how you like your martinis?
I usually do dirty vodka martinis, dry.
Amazing. So I personally like dirty vodka martinis as well. And I normally don't admit this, but I actually like shaking mine. I know that I just said we shouldn't, but the only real difference between shaking and stirring is adding aeration, which gives it a different texture. And my ratio for dirty martini is 1/2 ounce of olive brine to 3 ounces of vodka or gin. But right now we're going to do something that is one of my favorites. It's a Gibson. And what we're doing is I'm actually combining almost the idea of a dirty martini and the idea of a Gibson. So normally a Gibson is a dry martini that has a pickled onion. But what we're going to be doing is using a little bit of the pickling brine. And I'm going to do just about a teaspoon. So you could use a teaspoon measurement or a bar spoon just to add some of that dirtiness in there. Now, Cassie, can I ask you, how have you been involved in this amazing charity that we're in?
So I've been on the board of NCLD for, I want to say 10 or 11 years. I grew up with, and still obviously have, ADHD and dysgraphia. And I know you obviously have ADHD, as you said.
Yeah.
When were you diagnosed?
I was officially diagnosed when I was 9. I was actually diagnosed hyperactive when I was like 6. So I grew up, weirdly enough, with a mother that didn't want to believe in diagnoses and didn't want for me to take medication. So my mother was extremely strict with me and went that route, which is, I don't know, not a route that I would recommend for everybody. You have to have a lot of patience because, for me, they used to joke and say that if I ever stopped moving, I died like a shark because I was always fidgeting. But from that, I learned to sort of how to engage with people, how to look people in the eyes, and how to try to be a little bit more calm. And I would always joke that I developed restless leg syndrome because we would have family dinners together and I wasn't allowed to like misbehave during family dinner. So I would just kick my feet as fast as I could underneath my chair to like try to get me to sort of calm down and but also to focus. But I think these family dinners are the things that actually made me fall in love with hospitality. And that was something in retrospect, I never really knew that I would be in hospitality. I actually went to university and have a finance degree and started working at an investment bank. And working in an office definitely was not the right setting for me. I sort of fell into hospitality by mistake. When I decided to go back to school to try to go to medical school, one of my coworkers was an investor in a bar and restaurant and asked me if I wanted a job. And I realized, it's a profession that really fits, at least for me, people that have ADHD. I had amazing teachers. I went to a school that had, a gifted and honors program that allowed you to do different type of learning. You sort of were one classroom, but had different stations and you moved around all the time. So I wasn't so like steadfast at sitting at a desk, which to me would probably have been torture. But these professors were amazing and sort of taught me or knew that by doing small remedial tasks or small tasks that I would have, an outcome that I can see that I did a problem right, or that I could see that I accomplished a task, worked really well for me as a kid with ADHD. And in a way, hospitality is the same way. I think it actually, I would love to hear from you if working on the floors of Small A in your past, but for me, it's helped me out so much because I feel like I can multitask in a way because I think about everything I'm doing in the next few steps. So doing these tasks allows me to sort of move on from one to the next, but also, looking around, being aware, holding multiple conversations is something that really works for you behind a bar. It's never ever it was never ever an industry that I thought that it was even a viable industry for work, nor did I ever think I would go into it, but it actually ended up working really well for me. And it's funny because I speak to a lot of my coworkers or a lot of my employees, and a lot of them also are ADHD, and it makes them almost in a way, it gives them a one up in what they're doing.
Yeah, I definitely think sort of fast-paced, more creative jobs are definitely the way to go with ADHD and other learning differences. Just because it's more variety, so it doesn't get old. It doesn't, like, you don't get as distracted when you are doing a lot of different things. Whereas if I'm doing one thing for a whole day, it sort of loses interest.
Same. I mean, I was lucky enough to write a book, which I think, so we see that's a Nomad Cocktail book. And that was one of the hardest processes that I ever went through. Like having to sit down and write literally was torture. It took me a year, but I'm super happy I did it. Like I'd rather be behind a bar or running around and, feeling like I've accomplished things and being able to move on to the next thing quickly versus just sitting down and trying to do something for a long period of time. I sort of joke because, for me having ADHD, it's not that I can't pay attention. It's almost I pay attention to everything. So I'm almost like that dog in the movie where, he would go and see squirrel and look around. At a bar, that actually helps you because you're able to see everything that's happening around you. You're able to hear everything that's happening around you. So I'm able to see when a guest needs something. So speaking of ADHD, I totally went off track and creating this cocktail that we're supposed to make for everyone. But we're doing a Gibson, but we're doing my version of a Gibson. So again, what we did is we just put that teaspoon of pickling brine. Now I'm going to be using something different. It's another vermouth, but this is called the Blanc Vermouth. For most of you that don't know, there's sweet vermouth, dry vermouth, and Blanc Vermouth. Dry vermouth does have some sugar, but it has a lot less sugar. Blanc Vermouth and sweet vermouth are very similar. They have a higher sugar content, but are still, not insanely sweet. But Blanc Vermouth is actually sweetened with like white castor sugar or simple syrup when it's made, versus what people don't realize is that sweet vermouth is usually sweetened with caramel, and that's how it gets that color a lot of times. So I'm using this to balance out a little bit of that vinegar that you get from the pickling liquid. And I'm going to do an ounce of this.
To use the sweet vermouth or a sweeter Blanc Vermouth with the pickling seems kind of counterintuitive, but I guess it sort of balances out each side of the flavor.
It gives it more texture as well. When you use vinegar or any acids in drinks, you're going to need to balance it out by adding some sugar component. And then I also did 2 ounces of the gin here as well, as you saw. But, this cocktail isn't for everyone. Some people may like it drier. And if you do, then you're welcome to use dry vermouth as well. It still tastes delicious. I just personally like it a little bit better with the Blanc because it makes a more balanced cocktail for myself.
And you can make this one with vodka as well, right?
100%. You can make this one with vodka. It actually works pretty decently well with tequila as well. For those of you that are tequila lovers, it's obviously a very different cocktail for people that like margaritas or things along those lines. But people that like sort of more savory drinks may enjoy it with tequila. Another thing that you can use is aquavit, which is a spirit that is from the Nordic countries that has caraway.
I mean, I'm definitely going to try it with tequila because I'm a tequila lover and margaritas all the way, but I'll test this one out.
Perfect. It's almost there for me. Just going to finish stirring it. And then I'm going to use the pickled onion that we gave you the recipe for.
I see you're obviously using a smaller glass. And I wanted to see, the first glass you used, was that more of a champagne coupe or was that?
They're both cocktail coupes, but yeah, as you said, it's actually a little bit more classic, and that Marie Antoinette old school champagne coupe. And this one is what we call a Nick and Nora. There are differences in sizes. I like them both, but I just wanted to showcase a different glass. There's no real rhyme or reason of why I used it. As a kid with ADHD, I prefer these glasses that sort of tulip in versus a V-shaped ones because I move around all the time and I spill them.
I was
I'd
gonna
rather
say the same
do-
thing.
Yeah, I'd rather consume most of my cocktail than spill most of my cocktail, but yeah. So here we go. These are the two variations on martinis, and hopefully this gives you a little bit of a buzz and a good intro to go into the gala that we're going to be going into next.
Thank you so much again, Leo, for coming, for joining us, for giving us alcohol and getting us ready for this benefit. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care. Enjoy.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Leo and Cassia. Thanks for sharing your stories. And I learned so much. I can't wait to try it. I know I speak for everyone when I say you deserve a huge round of applause. I am Lindsay Jones, the president and CEO of the National Center for Learning Disabilities. And I want to thank each and every one of you for attending this benefit this evening. I wish we were together in person, and I hope we are next year. But tonight, I'm so glad we found a way to be safe and gather and celebrate our incredible award winners and our community, all forces for change. I want to say a special thank you to our board of directors, our professional advisory board, our young adult leadership council, and our awesome NCLD team, and the many, many parent advocates, educators, and administrators we work with and stand beside every single day. These last 2 years have been so challenging, but together and with your generous support, NCLD has developed information and resources in real time to help families, students, and educators keep learning going. We need your support now more than ever. Tonight, we are especially lucky to have a generous donor doubling all donations up to $50,000. So I thank you for your generosity in being here, and I hope you'll consider giving even a little bit more. There is more work ahead and so much more to do. But tonight, we celebrate. To our award winners and our scholarship winners, congratulations. We are so proud to honor you. And it's on with the show. Please join me for our main event by clicking the link in the chat right now, or the same link that you got in your email earlier. So thank you again so much, everybody, and enjoy.